Okay, so today I'm going to invite our steering team to come up and join us. Go ahead and come up.
Thanks, I'm already here.
Okay, hi, welcome. So part of why I wanted to do this is just to give you a chance to have a little bit more connection with our steering team. The steering team is just another level of leadership that covers some of the things that might be a little more behind the scenes. We have our table leaders and then steering team. Amanda coordinates our table leaders. She does a fabulous job of keeping them informed and all that good stuff. And then Melanie is our lead mentor. Kristen is our finance person. She saves my life on a daily basis.
Yay for budgets.
Yes, budgets. Beth is our MOPS coordinator. Kelly is our creative setup and events person. And Andrea is all of the above. Andrea has very graciously volunteered her time to support our staff and the transitions that we have here in our steering team, and she's wonderful. So welcome. I'm so glad to have you.
Yes.
Yes, you're glad too. Yes. All right, so the first thing I wanted to do is, in your handbook, there's a little, you don't have to get it out, I'll read it to you, but there's this little thing about noticing goodness. Could it be possible that we don't need new things, but rather new eyes to see what we already have? What if we regained our sense of vision, an acute resolve to find hope in the cracks and the mire of the mundane? Noticing what is good gives us the gift of perspective and reminds us that the sacred is closer than we think. And so today we just wanted to share some of our personal thoughts on noticing goodness and little tips or tricks that we've done or ways that we've tried to be intentional about that. So you get a chance to know us a little bit more and then hopefully walk away with something that can help you notice goodness in your own lives. So we're going to get started. We have 4 areas that we'd like to cover, and we don't want to take up too much time, but let's start with marriage. I'm looking at Melanie because she's always our marriage guru. I'll share something really quick. It's kind of a tangible thing that we thought of a couple years ago, because I think one of the biggest surprises for me was how much marriage changes once you have kids. Like, anyone can tell you that before you have kids, but I think the realization of it, when it happens, you're just like, wow, holy cow, that's a lot different. So the word I keep thinking of, and I'm sure you've heard this a lot, is intentional. You know, it's just, you have to be a lot more intentional about the time that you carve out, because it's just, when you were dating, time was endless, right? Like, you were always together and you didn't have anything else to do but be together. So one kind of fun thing we did a while ago is we have the fortunate circumstance of being in the same area that we grew up in the same area that we met in. So we did a date night that was a photo scavenger hunt. And so we kind of challenged ourselves to revisit like key places of our dating relationship and get a picture there. So it was super fun. Like, I thought he was gonna be like, that's way too cheesy, I'm not gonna do that. But he was totally into it. And so we ended up, this was probably 7 years into our relationship as a married couple, right after we had Isaac. So we went back, you know, and kind of revisited. And I think that's my encouragement to you in trying to notice goodness in your marriage, is to go back and revisit some really great memories and some really great times that you've had. And I think that that helps open our eyes to new opportunities and new memories that we're creating. It's sort of like a trickle-down effect, if you will. So that's my input for my noticing.
Has anybody else done that kind of an exercise? Yeah. Nobody? Oh, I see a couple little hands. Okay. Those are such important things. I love the word intentional. I use it a lot because life is busy. Think of just pause for a moment. Think about your morning getting here. You probably weren't thinking warm, loving thoughts about the man you married, were you? And yet, that's the way our day is filled, with all the minutia of detail and what we do just to get through the day and make sure that everybody's fed and, you know, their teeth brushed, maybe, you know, those kind of things. And so when it comes to our marriage, even though that's how our family came to be, we tend to say, he's a grown-up, I'm a grown-up, he can take care of himself, I got too much on my plate. So I want to encourage you, something that, that I encourage all of our leaders to do, to be intentional, and here's another suggestion of something that you can do. We all have cell phones. I've encouraged all of our leaders to put 2 different reminders on their phones, one for the morning and one for later in the day, maybe when he's home, or if his schedule's flipped, he works after, whatever, you figure that out. But the 2 purposes of that, one is to pray for your husband. Now, if you're mad at your husband and you're frustrated with your husband, nothing will bring you more in line than if you have to pray for him. and so sometimes it is the accountability of having a reminder on your phone, oh, I gotta pray for him. Because honestly, girls, let's just be real. We don't always feel like praying for our husbands. We're like, you know, he can do his own thing.
She made us do this. I'm going to interrupt real quick.
Okay.
She made us do this, and it's legit. When it pops up to pray, you think, oh, sure, I'm going to pray for James. But when you're mad and it comes up, you're fiery mad. Like, it makes you even more mad that you have to take a moment and pray, because usually it's a reminder, like maybe this happened in the last 2 weeks, when it popped up at 10 a.m. that I was like, I am not going to pray for you, because you should be praying for me that I cool down and that we can talk. Maybe it's pregnancy hormones, I don't know, but that's honestly was my first reaction when it popped up on my phone. I'm so upset that praying for you is just stepping too much outside myself. And it was a reality check, like maybe I'm being a little too selfish. My perspective needs to change about this fight, and I'm blanking on pregnancy hormones, but it is legit. You should definitely do the reminder on your phone.
That's what's working.
Not at 10 a.m. though, that's like crazy time.
So pick the time that works best for you, but be intentional to pray for your husband. And sometimes, girls, we live in the same house, we're doing life together, we're, divide and conquer, and we don't even know what is the biggest burden on our husband's heart, because we haven't asked, and we don't have time to talk. So that's where the intentionality comes in. And sometimes it is as simple as having a reminder on your phone, so you go, oh yeah, I gotta do that. We all have, lists, we all have things we gotta do. We've got, the doctor's calling to give us reminders of things. So let's make marriage a priority and love our husbands by praying for them. Then the second reminder is to be focused intentionally on some FaceTime. To get in his face, tell him how handsome he is, tell him how thankful you are that he's a good provider, and that I know you don't feel like going to work, and I know it's hard, but I'm glad you do it. Thank you. Taking that reminder every day to look for a way to encourage, uplift, thank, show that gratitude to him. It's a very powerful thing. How many of you like to go and hang out with your girlfriends? Now, every hand should be raised here because I know that's true, okay? We don't take that type of focus on our husbands, usually when we're in this stage of life, actually any stage of married life. It's very easy to get all excited about going out, hanging out with other people, and the person we love most that we're doing life with, we're just kind of like, okay, babe, I'll be back later. Right? So be intentional. How many of you have a cell phone? Okay. I expect to hear reminders going on. Next. Nobody else has any marriage encouragement.
One more. Okay. A couple of things. I think the one thing that I don't know about you all, but the thing that makes me the most frustrated with my husband is when I feel like he misjudges my heart. Don't you know that he thinks I have no reason for doing anything. Right? I have reasons. It's all very intentional. The reason that laundry is right there is for a specific reason. The reason those things are on the steps is because they're going upstairs, and if I go up every time something goes up there, I'm going to get nothing done. So my husband can be, I feel critical about that. But I realize I do the same thing to him, and so just believing the best about your husband. I want him to believe the best of me, so I think just believing the best, when he says something, I think, wow, that wasn't that kind, or whatever, just think, wait a minute, what's going on with him? I just believe that he had the best intention, even if it didn't come out that way or I didn't receive it that way. I think that's really helped me, and I don't always do it, but I'm even encouraged just by talking about it. That's something I need to be really intentional about, and just believing the best of him. He has the best intentions.
I like that a lot. Something I've also been trying to do recently is, it's so easy to focus on like what he's not doing, right? So like you're not emptying the dishwasher, you're not putting the clothes in the hamper, you're not picking up whatever, you know? But I've really been trying to spend some time creating an atmosphere that he can do the things he's really good at. So like, I love watching him play with the kids. I mean, he really is just an excellent father. And so I just have been challenging myself to really enjoy those moments. Like when he gets home from work, I just kind of check out and I'm like, hey, go to town, have fun with those boys. And I just get to sit back and watch, right? And just some of the other things that if he's really good with fixing things, you know, I'm kind of the damsel in distress, like, oh, I can't fix this, could you fix this for me, you know, like that kind of stuff, like just give him those boosts of encouragement in the things that he's good at, because those things that both of us are not good at are always going to be there, and like you said, you don't want him constantly pointing out what you're not doing, so try to focus on, you know, what he is doing and what he's doing well, so. Okay, so the next topic was in our parenting, noticing goodness in our parenting. Anyone?
I kind of, as we were preparing for this, I kind of had some examples like in my mind, so I'm going to share those and maybe that will, you know, it'll recall something in your mind as well. I've been trying to get up early, and that's when I'll spend time with the Lord, which if someone wakes me up, I'm a huge jerk. Just gonna be honest. I like me some sleep, so I need to wake myself up because I don't have any nice yet. So I set my alarm early so I can like get down there and not talk. I have a lot to say all day, like after 7 a.m. I'm ready, smiling, but not before then. So at like 6, I'd be setting my alarm, you know, and ready, and I'll go downstairs and take the dog out and do all the things I need to do. Well, anyhow, the time change, I don't know if that affected any of your houses the way that it has affected mine. These little like footsteps are coming down the steps, and I'm like, no way, what are they doing? So I'm getting super grumpy because I'm like, oh, now I don't have any nice, and now I'm not gonna get any nice because I can't read my Bible or pray, so I'm already like, worst day ever, every morning. So how nice to be greeted with like, what are you doing up? Do you know what time it is? So that was kind of our mornings for a while, and I was just super like frustrated. Well, we went to this trunk or treat thing with my in-laws, and I'm sitting in the back, and they were driving me and my daughters. And my mother-in-law said, when Reed stayed the night, which is my 7-year-old, she said when she stayed the night, she was up early. She came strolling out, and it was like 6:45. I was like, oh, I know, I'm so sorry. And she said, you know, both of us, you know, her and Papa were like, why are you up so early? And she said, well, I like to get up early. She said, that's what my mom and dad do, and that gives me time to spend time with Jesus. So like in the back, like, weepy, me, you know, of course, but weepy, but I feel like just in those moments and in those frustrations, I feel like there's something good's happening. So hang in there when you're frustrated with your little ones.
So, just like our husbands, I've noticed we can just notice the things that frustrate us about our kids. And with my daughter, we always joke that her husband's gonna have to take care of her because she cannot do anything for herself. She's 7 years old. And there was literally one day where I said, Maddie, we're leaving, get your shoes on. And she couldn't find one of her shoes. So it wasn't until we got to the store that I realized she put on one shoe. And that's just how she is. If her head wasn't attached, she wouldn't bring it, you know. And one day we get in the car and she has to bring gym shoes on gym days. And she goes, Mom, stop the car. And I go, what? She goes, I have to run in and get something. And she runs in and she goes, I noticed my gym shoes weren't in my bag, so I went in and got them. And I stopped the car, I was like clapping for her, I was cheering, I called my husband, I had her tell him, and it was a win, and it's just noticing those little things. And I think we were late for school because I was so excited that she took the initiative and did something, and so she's never gonna forget her gym shoes, so.
Okay, what should I say? What should I say? I'm the only one who hasn't said anything. Anyway, okay. I guess one thing is that I've learned that to apologize to your kids when you lose it,
when you yell at them, because we can be the greatest example of what Jesus has done for us. And I have found that when I apologize more to my children, not all, I don't know, but they have started saying sorry more to me now. And it's like I kind of like almost wait like 10 minutes and then they always come around. And you know what? I'm convinced it's because I showed them that. But that was an idea for me. I don't know where I heard it from, maybe Melanie or something. That it's okay to apologize to your kids because we're not perfect, May that encourage you. It's okay to do that.
Something that's been working for us recently was, so apparently I found out that 100% of my household is very reactive. So, like, we have a bunch of loose cannons in our house, and we just, like, react before, Asher cut the smallest piece of hair. I mean, my son has really long hair, and it's funny, but anyway. I saw this little tuft of hair next to the scissors and lost my ever-loving mind. He was so scared of me in that 5 minutes that I just don't even know if he'll ever forget that experience. And then I'm looking at him and I'm going through, and I'm not kidding you, could not even find where it came from. It was that insignificant that I could, but I saw the hair and I saw the scissors, and we don't cut our own hair, and you have to understand this, and you must not ever do this again, and just lost it, right? So we've been trying, something that I think has really helped me notice goodness in my parenting is when I ask them to notice goodness. So whenever I feel like the temperature rising and everything's kind of going cuckoo, bananas, we all just stop and we're like, okay, what are 3 things that we're thankful for? And everybody, comes up with, Isaac, it's always the same 3 things. And Asher's like, I'm thankful for the windows and my shoes and but I mean, they're getting it. It's gonna catch on one of these days. But it's something that we can all do together wherever we are. It just diffuses that tension, and we don't always do it. We've had some pretty crazy mornings going to school where I'm just I don't want to be thankful for anything. Just get to school. But when we do it, it's really been helpful. So I think it's twofold. It's encouraging them to notice goodness, and when you hear the things that they're noticing, it helps you just kind of reframe and think, okay, things are going okay. It's not a total failure over here. They're getting some of this stuff on a day-to-day basis. So that's something we've tried.
I think probably one of the biggest tips that I learned when I was raising, I still am, the little ones, but now I've gotten it sort of, is come down to their level. And for that conversation of when I learned it was when you are ready to discipline them because they've done something naughty or something. But I have tried to come down to their level when it's time to play with a 2-year-old, or it's time to be intentional with a one-on-one conversation with my daughter. I purposely tried to get to the level where her and I have eye contact. And now that she's 8.5, it's just sit on my couch, and that's kind of weird because it makes me feel so old and stuff. But anyways, no. Yeah, yes. Anyways, but when you get on their level, I think you see their tenderness, and you're reminded of that they're a child, that they have these child tendencies, and then they have this real-world perspective that they're working through, and then they have this thought bubble of probably saying, well, my mom thinks this of me, or I need to react this way, or I need to behave this way. And so they're just trying to process a lot for being so little. And so I think when you come down to their level, you are softened. And so one of my sons, he has never liked physical touch. He always wanted to sit by himself, even when he was a baby. And I hate that. And so now he's 6, and I purposely, whenever he tries to come and talk to me, I will purposely rub him. I will hold his hand during confrontation or something, because I want him to know that this is a tender time. This is a time for him and I just to communicate, but that we can be sweet together even when I'm disciplining or working on, house rules or whatever it is, or schoolwork or something. But that I want him to know that there's something when you are physical, especially with boys, that just calming them, just by rubbing them, holding their hand, and he usually tries to pull away, and I usually hold tighter, and it makes me so sad that he's like that because none of my other kids are like that, but I work so much harder to that so that his wife will thank me one day, basically, and then I'll get more hugs when he's a teenager. But I just would say, be physical, but not in the way that discipline you always think of physical. Be gentle during confrontation and discipline time.
You know, the daily grind of living is sometimes all that we are focused on. And so when it comes to noticing goodness, think outside the box. Think as you're running into Target or you're getting ready, you know, to get your kids ready for school or to come to MOPS or to go to church. A well-placed compliment is very powerful. To say, oh, I noticed you do a really good job combing your hair. I noticed that you were so sweet to your baby sister. I love that. Jesus loves that. I love to see that. It doesn't have to be a long conversation. It doesn't have to be this intentional, you know, conversation, because that doesn't always work with little ones. But speaking words of affirmation to your children is very, very powerful. When you walk in this room and someone says, hey, I'm so glad to see you, or oh, you look beautiful today, it lifts you. It does change the mood. So noticing goodness is really something we can very easily weave in and out of our day. With each other as adults, but especially with our kids. My kids are older, and let me tell you, when they are ruffled around their feathers are ruffled and they're not very happy or they're kind of cranky and they're having a rough day, they're young adults. They're in a very different stage of life. But a compliment from me, even just passing, I see what it does to them. And they're still my kids, but they're adults. Let's infuse our households and our children with that same kind of love and affirmation. Change the temperature in the car when it's frustrating. I used to do this with my kids when we go to school. They'd be cranky and I'd say, okay, everybody, you have to smile really big for 30 seconds. And I would be counting it off. And they'd be, no, keep smiling. Because I had heard it somewhere, and it's really true, that when you are in a frustrated mood, if you consciously smile for 30 seconds, it lifts your mood. Smile, girls! Everybody smile!
It's really good when someone else smiles at you like that.
So look for those kind of little things that you can do to change the tone and the temperature and lift each other's spirits.
If I can just add on that, I feel like even I've had moments of just asking God where I'm like, whoo, I can't do this. I don't like them right now. I don't like this situation. When my oldest started kindergarten, it was like breakdown city at our house, like just tired, angry, anything it could be, it was that. And felt like I really was trying to get away to be like, God, what do I need to do? Like, help me in this. And I felt like he was like, don't worry about her outward appearance. Take care of inside. Like, worry about her on the inside. And then, I don't know if this happens with you guys, but I relate very well to one of my children who is just like me. And then I have one that's just like my husband, and I'm like, what is your deal? Like, I can't figure you out. What's wrong with you? And there's nothing wrong with her. She's just different. But I was really struggling to relate with her. We had no common ground, and I just feel like she was kind of stressing me out. And so I just kept praying, like, God, let me see. And there was like a big collision outside one day. My youngest ran alongside of my oldest on her bike, and they like collided. Like, arms were flailing, people went flying, blood was dripping, like it was a traumatic scene. And my oldest, who was not even hurt, she just couldn't get it together. And my youngest, who was hurt, like, she was done crying and fine. So that night I was tucking my oldest into bed, and she was like, I just can't stop thinking of how bad I hurt Harper. And I'm like, honey, it's okay. She's tough. She's okay. And she said, I know she's tough, Mom, and everyone says it about Harper, and I'm just not. And I was like, you're right. I'm like, Harper's tough, and Daddy's tough, but I was like, but I am not tough. I'm like, you're just like me. We're sensitive and we cry and we're sissies when we get hurt or get shots or whatever. And so I feel like just asking God, to show that, He'll get that opportunity.
One thing I wish I would have remembered when my kids were younger and is to laugh. Laughter is such a gift from God. And if anyone's looking for a good, quick devotional, there's a lady named Liz Curtis Hicks. She's a Christian speaker, but she also writes kids' books. And my mother-in-law had given me this devotional years ago for Christmas, but I have laughed more in the morning just because of her devotional. Sometimes if my kids are upset or whatever, I'll just look at them cross-eyed, just something like this, and they'll just start laughing. And what a way to break the mood, or we'll just do silly things, or I don't know, just laughter is a gift.
Yeah. Okay, I'm kind of embarrassed to say this because it's really obvious, but it's on my heart. So part of noticing goodness for me is not noticing the badness. Like, here's an example that happened yesterday. So my daughter comes home with a test, and she got like a 96 on it. So I want to say, oh, let's look at what you got wrong and figure that out. Because that's how I'm wired. That's just how I think. I'm like, and then you'll do better. And I was like, I felt like the listener was like, shut it. And I was like, oh, that's an option? Like, I know that seems so obvious, but it's like, oh, I could just say, wow, that's a great job, and then shut it. So that's
So I feel like obviously a lot of these tips and things that we do, I mean, it applies across the board. It's obviously a little different when you're talking to kids or when you're talking to your husband. We were going to spend some time talking about friendship, and we will. I don't want to take too much time on that. But so noticing goodness in our friendship, but some things that some words that kind of stood out to me as I was thinking about noticing goodness. One was benefit of the doubt, or believing the best. So I think that applies across the board. You know, you want to give people the benefit of the doubt. Believe the best in them. They're not trying to do this to you. And even if they are, if you believe that they're not, you'll feel a lot better about it. So that was one. And reframe it. So reframe the situation. You know, we're always going to have bad things that are happening and things that we can focus on that didn't go the way that we wanted them to. But when you make yourself reframe that, you know, and find either what you can learn from it or what you can show your kids from it, how you can communicate better through it, like reframe those things and find the good in it. Now I lost my train of thought for my words. That stood out. Gratitude. So, you know, how we were like, find 3 things you're thankful for. Like, I think a lot of noticing goodness just involves gratitude and not, you know, focusing on the things that we don't have, but looking at the things that we do have. And in friendship, I think one thing that I've found that's helped me notice goodness is to, I don't want to say lower my expectations, because I think it's good that we have expectations of our friendships and our relationships, but just to be aware of that they're not too high expectation, you know, like letting the relationship ebb and flow, because they're going to, you know, as you have these lifelong friendships and relationships, they're going to change. And I found in my life that the harder I try to hold on to what that relationship was, or how it started, or how it used to be, the more often it's difficult to navigate that friendship. But when you kind of notice it for what it is and let it become this new thing that it might be, it's a lot easier, and it's good. Like, it's easy to navigate. So for example, my very best friend moved away to South Carolina right after she had her first baby. Like, it was supposed to be our time of like, yay, we're having kids together and all this stuff. And so it was tough, you know, and I felt like I was kind of being abandoned in this time of life that was like so important. And it would have been really easy to just be like, well, you're, you know, hundreds of miles away now, and things aren't going to be like they used to be. And we had some tough times, you know. It was hard to stay in communication and do these things. But I think once we both realized that the friendship was still good, it was just different, it took off, and now it's better than it ever was before, and we're still hundreds of miles apart. So I just think my encouragement in friendship has been to let the relationships be what God wants them to be in your life for the time that they are, and don't fight for something that it's not meant to be at that point in time. I don't know if I said that well, but that's what.
So I think a good word to tack on that is grace, extending each other grace. There's going to be times when we don't feel like we're being a very good friend because we're just taxed. We are overloaded life is really crazy busy. Does that mean I don't love my friend as much as I used to? That I don't wish that I had time to spend with her? Of course not. But life changes. And if we can get in the habit of grace, extending grace to, hey, no, I know you got to cancel. I understand. Instead of pouting or being irritated. Wow, that's a powerful thing, because guess what? We're all going to need that grace extended to us at some point. And so noticing the goodness of, I'm thankful for this friend, I'm thankful for you, and yeah, we'll connect later, is really, that is noticing goodness. It's not focused on, how it's changing, or that they're moving away, or that maybe they're a little ahead of us in raising their children, so the kids are older and they're in school and mine aren't yet, and so, boy, school is a very different season of life, and we're not on the same page, we're not constantly connecting. We can focus on all of that and then be very discouraged and despondent. And then the next time we see them, we're like, hey, right? We do it because it affects our attitude. If we can extend grace and notice the good things that string life together, it affects our attitude. And that affects the way we interact, not only with that friend, but with everybody in our life. So I think grace is really an important thing to grab on. It's a tool to put in our tool belt. God has extended such grace to us. One of the most important words in Scripture, I think, as far as an attribute of God, is that He's long-suffering. Think about that. We read that, long-suffering. What does that mean? He suffers long. He is patient with us. And we, if we're to imitate Christ, which is what we're called to do, then we should be able to extend grace and be long-suffering with anybody else's schedule and their life and the needs that they have, because we need that as well.
I always see friendship as a way to hear from God or to be God to somebody else. And I mean that in, for me, I'm a words of affirmation person. And when I'm praying to God and I'm frustrated in a moment, He seems to always answer that prayer with a friend who I come to their mind and I get a text. Or I was really stressed about the dumbest thing, and then Andrea texted me a couple weeks ago and she's like, hey, can I pick up Maddie for you? And I was like, yes, you're God's answer to prayer. And I see God answering those little prayers to get throughout the day through friends. And then when I have extra time or energy, then I find myself praying, God, who needs this? Who can I love? Who can I text? Who can I offer? And usually He brings somebody to my mind. So for me, friendship has always been that God relationship for me.
So the other thing I had in my head about that experience with when friendships change is that I've also noticed that God totally fills that void. So if I had spent all my time focused on what had changed and what I didn't have anymore, I would have missed several other relationships that God brought into my life that are just as close and sometimes closer than that relationship. And so I think that's the thing, is it's noticing the goodness, like not staying focused on what we don't have, but focused on what we do have. And then in that time that we have together, not being like, oh, I wish we had more time together, I wish your schedule was different, or, but the time that we are together, making it the most of it, and celebrating that you have this time together. So that was another thing.
A little bit off of what Kristen has said, I feel like, let me say this without crying, I feel like my life would be a lot more difficult without friends. They fill a void that our husbands definitely can't fill, and are just some relief from our children, and they definitely can't, be filled with that either. But I've been just in a difficult season, and I'm sure many of you have been there, or in and out of those. And there are just things, daily tasks that I cannot do without the help of my friends. And I feel like so many of them are in this room, and I just feel like they teach me what it looks like to be a Christ follower, and they teach me what it looks like to be a good friend and help someone in need. And it's made my life a lot easier. And I'm just really thankful that women understand women, that moms understand where you're at and maybe some things that are difficult. And so I feel like my encouragement in that, noticing goodness, I mean, notice your friends, but step out, I mean, maybe where it's uncomfortable, and that will add so much depth to a friendship. Whether you know what someone's going through or not, it can literally change, the trajectory of that friendship or that walk with the Lord. So you can really be a blessing to someone in that and be the goodness in their life, and that's reciprocated, and multiplied by a million, overflowing.
I'm just going to tack on to Kelly's. I feel like a lot of times I feel like I want to do something for someone, I feel like it's not enough. Like it's not good enough, it's not big enough. And I just encourage you to just do what you feel like you can do. And I cannot tell you how many people have been so blessed with something I thought was not a good gift, or whatever that was. You know what I mean? Like, I can't really make you a full meal. It doesn't have a salad, it doesn't have a dessert. Here's what I've got for you. But like God will put on my heart. And people are like, I cannot tell you how this blessed me today. This was going on, this was going on, that super blessed me. So just encourage you, whatever you can offer to someone, whatever you feel like is on your mind or heart, or what you have that day, just bless people. Just do it.
So Kelly touched a little bit on how, when things aren't going well, how to notice goodness, and we're going to talk a little bit about that really quick. It reminded me of what I wanted to read to you guys. What if we redeemed sorrow? If we called it good and recognized that sorrow is part of our humanity. So sorrow or trials, whatever, difficult times, whatever you want to call it. A delicate melody that weaves humanity with the holy and allows us to empathize with the hurting places in the world and in our hearts. When sorrow is near, it helps to look to the good. The good is found in altars that we build during the daylight, when things don't look so dark. There is a saying, forgetfulness leads to exile. Remembrance leads to redemption. When life is good, take the time to build altars, journal, celebrate, create markers that you can look to be reminded of the inherent goodness of living. This will look different for each of us. I have a wall in my house, not me, where I hang a random assortment of photos of Joe and I when we first met. Across its picture of my horse from when I was 10. Art my kids have made, a postcard from a friend, a blessing my mom wrote for me. This wall is my reminder, an altar of sorts, to celebrate the goodness that surrounds me. My wall is a powerful visual reminder of goodness for the times I struggle to find the good. So I wanted to read that to you for two reasons. We were going to talk a little bit, I feel like we're running out of time. Maybe I'll just let you guys talk about this at your tables. I wanted to talk about noticing goodness in our culture, because this world, it's just crazy, right? And I don't have the answer. Like, it's very discouraging sometimes. One thing I do is sometimes I just have to unplug. Like, I give myself a limit of the news that I can take in for the day, and then I unplug, and I just spend that time praying for whatever it is that, is stressing me out in that moment. Because our world just needs goodness, and I think this is part of how we can do that. It's hard to look at a tragedy, a real tragedy that affects so many people and find the goodness in it, but I do believe that it's there. And so encouraging each other, praying when we can't find the goodness, and just really almost simplifying, like when such large tragedy happens, I think it helps to just go to the super simple, like so many times this fall I just found myself driving around and like the leaves were just breathtaking. And like to me, that was what I needed in that moment, to just forget all of the other stuff that was going on in the world and my family and whatever, and to just take a minute to celebrate the leaves, So just really simplifying and finding those small goodnesses, because sometimes just the little ones can be enough to just put us over that hump when things are so overwhelming, So I don't know if anyone has any other thoughts about our culture and just the way of the world and how to encourage each other.
I've really struggled with what happened last weekend in Paris, just like overwhelming with fear and but it's also opened my eyes to the hope that I have in Jesus, that this life is not it. I don't mean to bring you guys down, but through that, like, the fear and stuff that I've been dealing with, it's like God has opened my eyes again to just his love for me and his goodness and how I want to share that with my kids. And one thing that really helps me, this is just words of advice, is to put on godly music in your home. Especially, I'm home all day, my kids go to school. That's like a big spiritual battle to me in my mind a lot. So play spiritual music. It just takes your mind off the worries. And I had great advice from my aunt years ago. When I'm feeling down, clean. Sweep a floor, do something physical. Seriously, it gets your mind off what you're so focused on. So I guess you can call that perseverance, to stay busy. So yeah, that's all. Thanks.
When I was thinking about noticing goodness, for me, I've gone through seasons where, oh yeah, I'm good with noticing goodness and God's goodness. But lots of times I'm just reminded that it's a choice. This week was not awesome in my house. I have 3 boys, and I might have a 4th. I don't want to know until it comes out. No, it's okay. I am grateful that God has prepared me to do all of that, but it doesn't mean that I am not struggling. And this noticing goodness thing was totally on my mind since we're supposed to be speaking on it, and it was a choice for me this week with 3 boys who took pen all over my good chair, and I can't get it out. Every time I cleaned something, it was dirty. Like, all the clean laundry was dumped out over their room mixed with Legos, so I was shaking out jammies, and Legos were coming out. And so I just kept telling myself, this is a good moment. Like, I wasn't feeling it. I was not feeling there was no goodness. But at the same time, I had this peace in home that could obviously only come from God that said, my boys were playing with 1,000 Legos. And yes, they're all over their room and they got them taken away, but I realized that it's a choice. It's a choice for me to respond a certain way or to discipline a certain way or to choose in that moment what the good moment was. And for me right now, it's just that I do have 5 healthy kids. And I'm constantly reminded of that. It's overwhelming at times because I see so much other stuff like you see on the news and stuff. But it's a choice for me to simplify and be reminded that God has blessed me with these 5 kids that are healthy. And so far he thinks I'm still capable to do this job. But it's a choice. And when I look at friendships, that is a choice. How I react in my marriage and interact in my marriage, that's a choice. It's all a choice to choose the goodness and sit down and take the time to be invested in those relationships. So I would encourage you to make the choice to see the goodness, because we see a lot of bad in our days, and we see a lot of messes in our days, and we see a lot of monotony in our days. But those moments when you're standing at the sink for the 100th time, it's a blessing to know that you have mouths to feed, because so-and-so down the street may not, or this adoption fell through and they can't even get pregnant, now their adoption fell through. Like, I've heard so many stories where mouths to feed in the home isn't what they have, but they crave it. And so I count my blessings, and I would just say it's my choice to notice goodness, and it's totally all from God.
Thank you for sharing that. When I think of the culture and noticing goodness, as you said, Nancy, it can be very discouraging, especially if you're a news person who likes to listen to that. It's important to know what's going on in our world so that we can pray and be proactive and do the things that we are called to do by God. But I have found for myself, when I'm watching, like what happened in Paris and different news stories, I've kind of trained myself to look for the ways that humans are reacting and coming around and rallying around. That encourages me. It gives me hope that everybody's not a horrible person. Because if you just sit and listen to what's coming at you from the news, you can think that. When I'm out or I go to Target and I see that young mom, and maybe it's one of you, with a belly out to here and 3 kids crying in the cart, or an infant in the seat that's, just needs to nurse and she's just trying to get through Target. I look at that and I go, that is God's creation right there. And I notice that, and I might pat her on on the back or say, "You're a good mom," as I walk by, because I'm trying to notice the good. When I see a couple, I don't care what age they are, a married couple walking and that husband reaches over and grabs for his wife's hand, or he's patting her back, or they're sitting in church, or they go to pray and they reach for each other, I take note. Because it's an encouragement to me that the culture around us, yes, Satan is alive and well. There's a lot of trash that's going on in our world, but we are called to be the light. And if we can notice and expand God's kingdom by the lives that we touch, and by noticing when there's good things going on, what an encouragement that is, then we can affect the culture. We can make a difference in our world. Don't let that overwhelm you, because there's a lot to be done, and we have to say no to some things because we've got our own families to raise. But look for ways to be a light. Look for ways to affect the culture, because guess what? This culture, God created us. Yes, like Beth said, we're just passing through. This is not our ultimate home. When we've accepted Christ as our personal Savior and we've chosen a relationship with Him, we know that eventually heaven is the result of that. We know that when it's our time to pass from this earth, that we'll be in the presence of Jesus. Share that, girls. Share that hope. That's how we can affect our culture and help them to notice goodness.
I think just something that kind of sums it all up and helps these things to be possible for us is to remember that when we can't control what's going on around us, we can be intentional about what is going inside of us, in our minds and our hearts. And so to really, in times of difficulty or just in general, to get through this life, pay attention to what you're letting in your mind, what you're letting in your heart, what you're letting in your relationships. Put good things in so that you have the goodness to give to others, And so I think that's probably the most important thing in all these things that we talked about.
Nancy, if I could just speak for us, and certainly it's on my heart to notice goodness. What incredible caliber of women God has provided to lead us in this ministry. This has been such a rich morning. Absolutely everything you guys have said, I'm like, I can do that. I need that. I can do that. What a gift, and how good He is, and how good you are to commit your time and your energy to serve us.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'll read you one more thing so I can explain a little project that we're going to do at our tables during our talk time. Look to the good and be reminded that God is with us in both the daylight and the darkness. May we decide to feel deeply. May we realize that each of us can choose to tell our story 1,000 different ways. The very definition of flourishing is to choose, instead of tragedy, to call the moments in our lives what they really are, epic. What you see in front of you may be far outside of what you dreamed, but when you have the boldness to call it beautiful, instead of calling it cursed, you are taking part in something holy. May we sit with sorrow and build altars of delight, reminding ourselves that even though we have wounds, we are still called to sing. So we wanted to provide you with a little opportunity today to have something tangible to remind you of goodness. So whatever has been on your heart this morning, whatever you're trying to notice goodness in, if you have something that you need to be reminded of, if you have something that you are encouraged by, that you have been noticing goodness in, and that's a reminder to you to be able to see goodness in other areas, we have a little project that we're going to do that will help you mark that moment and kind of build your remembrance there for that. So Kelly,
will you hold that? Sure. We're just going to add some more flowers to the table, girls. We're flourishing in what we're noticing in goodness. So you guys, okay. Sorry, I'm being a diva. So you have some green rectangles at your table. Maybe have a leaf cutter. You guys don't have a lot of scissors, so grab someone, they can stack them. You're just gonna make a green leaf. Go back, kindergarten. Okay. So do green leaves, everyone. And then you either have a one or a pattern paper. You can pick either one. If it's a pattern paper, fold it. It's just gonna look better. All you're gonna do is you're gonna cut a circle. There's someone crafty at your table. I know I'm stressing some of you out. Do not fear, they might even cut your circle for you. Just cut a circle, and then you're gonna cut into a spiral, okay? You're just gonna cut a circle, and then you're gonna cut around and around and around. You're just gonna roll it up, and it's gonna make a rose. You have glue sticks, tape, however you wanna secure that is fine. Right on your leaf first, where you notice goodness, stick it right on. We're gonna see if we can do something fancy with it at the table, but for now, just leave it, set it out, and those we're gonna bring out for each meeting, just as a reminder of what you're noticing in your life that's goodness.